Ah, I think this should work. So, so we're on YouTube now, apparently, and this is supposed to be the intro. So, well, welcome. This is me. Uh, my name is sn0r, and I like to talk about geopolitics, IT, and probably a little bit of open source intelligence as well. These are kind of my things at the moment. And what we have is, as you can see, if you are watching, you can see my desktop. This is what I usually look at. I usually have two monitors. One died last night, actually. Was 18 years old. So, rest in peace. Little LG from, 2000. Let's see what, 2013, 2000, something like 2007 or 2006. So maybe 2005. So roughly 18 years old already, and it's done really well. It had five dead pixels. The colors were going. The little menu popped up all the time, and yeah, it's a shame that it went though, and I've been mourning that all day. Uh, anyway, so what we're going to talk about here is what's going on in the EU this week. Since this is an EU podcast, an EU-INT pod, it might be nice to know what's going on actually in that place that we live in, eh? So what I usually do for that, and this is just a kind of a primer on what's going on here in the background. I run a number of subreddits, so EU News, EU Space, EU Tech, European Army, European Union, European Culture. I'm also a mod on European Federalists, and that's kind of the European mainline news into Reddit. I mean, there's also r/Europe, but um, their content is more casual than just news. And I think it's important to highlight the news because the EU is completely terrible at selling itself. I think if we're talking about one thing that the EU can improve, it's probably that. It's getting better. I mean, crisis by crisis, people are getting more and more kind of sucked into, what the EU does, how it functions, and for me, but it's still not there. Brexit helped, so thanks, Britain, for that. It was very nice of you to highlight how the EU works by basically torpedoing yourself and shooting yourself in the face. It's much appreciated. Um, but the EU still has that kind of boomerish reliance on non. I'm not sure how to say it. They're not very good at putting forward content that matters to people, and in a way that people will actually consume it. And that's one of the reasons that I joined the European Union project and Forum Gottverfunken to get this stuff out. Because I see that, I mean, people in Europe possibly even don't know what's going on in the member state next door. And that is bad for EU integration because, I mean, there are so many issues that the EU touches on, which are global and which if you're a member state, you can't solve these issues by yourself. There's just no way. Um, so I mean, this is basically what I'm going to try to do here on this channel. Um, Kind of highlight the EU news, get people from different member states to talk to each other. Talk about how we can move this project forward because I mean, as a project, the EU is incredibly successful, but it's definitely not done and definitely not perfect. and you know, talking about it will give people a better understanding of what's going on, you know, in their lives, and also in the lives of also in the lives of people next door, so they can relate to each other. Sorry about that. That's my wife next door. She's watching animal videos right now, and I'm basically just broadcasting this from my front room. So I'm Dutch. I live in the south of the Netherlands. And I mean, my fascination with the EU basically started around the time that Brexit happened. My wife is English, or half English, half Swiss, actually. Um, so she's all non-EU and I'm all EU. And that kind of dichotomy, and especially because of Brexit, was kind of pushed um, into the forefront of my experience. And I found out that almost nobody that I talked to actually knew what the EU did pre-Brexit. Um, that's still the case. I mean, people don't know how it functions. I am often even confused, even though I've now spent the last 4 years kind of memeing about it and talking about it and trying to get as much information about it as I can. But this is something that you know that I'll try to work on in this podcast. You know, let's get the conversation started on this. So anyway, as you can see, I plan to go through the top 10 of what's been going on in the EU in the last week by looking at what's been posted on Reddit and the most kind of catchy things that that spring out. We'll talk a little bit about that. For example, you know, I mean, we have the top 10 here. One of the 10th one is quite well received. Road traffic fatalities in the EU in 2021. Obviously, you can see by this graph that there's a lot to talk about there as well. We're talking about Hungary. Hungary's prime minister calls the US main adversary, leaked documents say. Ooh, those leaks, man. It's just too much. Yeah. I'm not sure how much to believe of those leaks. I mean, I've seen various reports, and you know, I mean, obviously the leaker who's been arrested this week makes it a little bit more plausible. But you know, there's multiple leaks going around, so it's very hard to say which one's which, and you know what you could think about that. Moldova's going more pro-European, even more with their outdoor assembly. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I'll read into it. Also, how Russian oil gets shipped via India and then back into Europe. Very interesting. China arrests human rights activists en route to EU embassy in Beijing. So, naughty China. Poland busts Russian cyber spies targeting European diplomats. So that's also what to talk about. Europe's new wall. Finland is building a 124-mile-long border fence to protect itself from Russia. I don't know why El País used miles here, because they're a Spanish newspaper, and they're talking about a European event. So why they're using miles, I don't know. That's kind of weird. Macron says Europe must not be a follower on US, China, and Taiwan. Well, this is something that we've been discussing at length in the Discord. I don't think that Macron's comments, you know, just as an aside, I don't think that Macron's comments were necessarily anti-US, although he did name the US in a subsequent interview. But he didn't do himself any favors by presenting it in a way with the adversary, as it were. You know, the optics are terrible. It looks like he's siding with China, and he actually sidelined Ursula von der Leyen, our Commission president, who was with him on the trip. While he was having his meeting with Xi, she was doing a press conference on her own, you know, at the European Policy Center in Beijing. And you know, I mean, yes, he is a world leader, and she is as it were, a world leader annex, because she is representing the government of an institution which is not properly a state yet, I must say. Um, for example, when Macron arrived, he got the whole state, the state reception, with the honor guard, and the prime minister was there waiting for him. The Chinese prime minister was waiting for him at the airport, and many hands were shaken and pictures taken. Whereas Ursula von der Leyen basically just had to go through the tourist entrance and have fun. You imagine now. So this is something that it's what the optics were just bad, and Macron could have had that made that speech anywhere but with Xi in China. Um, so he kind of shot himself in the foot there, and this is something that that Macron often does. I mean, this is something that I think Drax said at some point, that he works on an ideological basis rather than on a practical basis, and this is why he kind of thinks that he can get away with just saying whatever he wants wherever he is, because it's part of his ideology. Um, but bad optics all around. Anyway, number two was U.S. concern over Hungary's close relations with Russia, which is fair enough. Hungary is doing an Erdogan right now. They're trying to straddle the EU and NATO on one side and Russia on the other. And you can see this. I mean, they have all kinds of investments. They have investments with Belarus, for nuclear power stations. They get their oil and their gas from Russia still, and it's actually surprising that they actually voted for the sanctions as far as they are. But I think that a fair amount of pressure from all the other leaders also ensued, so that Orban knew that he could get away with it. But now the U.S. is looking to sanction certain Hungarian individuals in connection with these investments and these banks and all those kind of things. And this is an ongoing issue, and we can see that Poland's getting really, really sick and tired of their thing, the Hungarian stance on Ukraine as well. In a recent speech, when the Polish Prime Minister was in Washington, he said that the differences are growing, and they are there, and that bodes badly for Russia. It bodes badly for Russia anyway, but it bodes bad for Hungary as well, because I think that at the moment, Poland is the only thing that's keeping Hungary from being sanctioned on a number of issues in the European Council. This is something to do with, I believe it's Article 7 or Article 8. Wolf will be able to tell us that. For a country to be sanctioned in the European Union, there has to be a unanimous vote on it, bar of course minus the country that is being sanctioned. And so far, Poland and Hungary have been keeping each other quite nice and safe from all the other rest of the European leaders, which want to sanction them, for example, for gay rights, for misuse of funds, in Hungary's case, or for the dismantlement of the judiciary in Poland's case, and to be honest, the dismantling of the Fifth Estate, the journalistic integrity in both. Poland's been moving more and more towards the European center on that, as in they've now conceded that they have to do something about the judges. The gay rights issue in Poland is as yet unresolved, but there's no more no gays allowed areas in Poland like there were a few years ago. For example, with respect to other issues, like there was a big hoo-ha about deforestation in Poland. these are all issues that the Poles have been shown willing on to move now, especially now that Hungary is, seen as a country which is ideologically unaligned with Poland now, after Hungary has started supporting Russia more and more. And you can see that, I mean, the Poles have always been on the Ukrainian side from the start, very vocal, very intense rhetoric from the Polish government towards Russia. And Hungary has been the exact opposite of that, giving them a way out in some cases of sanctions, for example, for nuclear things, or having individuals not get sanctioned because Hungary would object to those. These are all things that have been raised, and it kind of makes, it kind of puts Hungary on its own vis-a-vis the rest of the EU, with possibly only countries like Austria kind of on their side, maybe because of the neutrality principle that the Austrians still have vis-a-vis NATO. But I mean, countries like Estonia and Poland and Lithuania, and they're all reasonably done now with Hungary. So this is going to be an ongoing issue. So in that trend, I mean, the Hungarians are losing support fast. But to go back to China, because the number one thing this week that was upvoted was Verhofstadt's quote: "Should Europe rely on the US forever? No, Trump showed why. Europeans want a strong and autonomous EU, and the US has always supported this. Doubt. Dependence, no. Strong transatlantic alliance, yes. Vital." And I think that's about right, I mean, anyone that knows me knows I simp for Verhofstadt. I've actually voted in the European Parliament elections last time to make sure that he kept his seat. Just because he's so incredibly fun to watch in the European Parliament. He doesn't care, if you're not, if you do not prescribe to his point of view, he will lay into you, whether he's right or wrong. And it's wonderful to see such direct freshness. I mean, it's almost Dutch directness that he displays in the European Parliament. It's almost rude. So that's why I voted for him. But I mean, he's right in this. Should we rely on the US forever? No, especially not in defense matters. What we should be doing is cooperation. We should be cooperating in defense. We should be cooperating economically. Space is another area which we can cooperate in. For example, with the Artemis project, that is something that's being raised this week. Artemis is the moonshot mission, basically. That's how we're going to land astronauts on the moon. But I mean, this is another thing. We are with NASA on this. We designed part of their spacecraft. However, we didn't get a seat on the first mission to the moon. So I'm hoping that at least when we land on the moon, because the first Artemis mission was uncrewed, was launched into lunar orbit and then made its way back again. The second one will be just a around the moon trip, so they won't actually be landing on the moon yet. Just to test out all the systems, make sure that no one gets killed, and then on the third way around, they're gonna actually land on the moon for the first time in 70 years now. So, but we didn't get a seat. We didn't get a seat yet, I should say. So I'm hoping that it'll be European boots on the moon soon. But this is why we tend to play second fiddle to the US anyway, because they're a stronger economy and they're a more coherent mess than we are. But in the matters of defense, it's finally time for us to, and also in more strategic kind of geopolitical stance, it's time for us to kind of cohere to become a whole. It's going to be hard. I mean, no country wants to give up its foreign policy. Um, that is usually very much associated with sovereignty. However, we've seen this year that, for example, the Dutch and the German armed forces came together, and that's all going well. I think in consultation with each other is now how it goes. So if Germany wants to launch a war, they can't without the Dutch, and vice versa, because well, they'll be using our troops, um, or vice versa. So in the end, strategic autonomy, as they call it, is something that's important, and that's where we circle kind of round back to Macron in what he said in China, um, and even though his Taiwan comments were maybe not as well put as he should have, he does have a point. I also saw this week that Olaf Scholz said basically the same thing. So we have two leaders of the major European powers at least agreeing on this, and I think Meloni wouldn't mind a more European version of defense either. She's not a dumb cookie, she's reasonably smart. I used to before she came to power, I used to dismiss her because of her rhetoric, but now you can see that it's really kind of it's picking up, and she's doing a good job, at least externally, in my opinion. Internally, I mean, she is the leader of a far right party, so the anti-abortion and things like that. I mean, I'm as a person who's live and let live, it's not the kind of thing I'd vote for. But on Ukraine, she's been consistent, and I think also on European defense, she's been consistent. This is something that she supports and that she wants to further, which kind of flies in the way of Hungary's way of thinking about it. I think Orban was very pleased that she came to power, and now maybe he's not so much pleased anymore. So that's something that's gonna still echo in the next weeks and months. I think the interesting thing will be, pardon. In July, there's the NATO Vilnius summit, and a good indication of how far we are as a European bloc will be if Hungary okays Sweden's entry into NATO by then. This is something that will be ongoing. For now, it looks like that's being kept at a reasonably low pace until the Turkish elections are over, because that's the big thing. That's the big hurdle for the real Sweden's entry. But it'll also be interesting to see if Orban can be moved to support Sweden as well, because he's been. I mean, when it came down to Finland, Hungary, and Turkey were the last two holdouts getting NATO permission. Most countries did it quite readily, quite quickly. I think France took a little bit of time because that was just in their holiday, and well, you know how French are with their holiday. There's no work. So then this is something that we'll be talking about next week. I think as well. So that's a bit of the roundup of what's been going on. So this is something that I'll be doing every week, and we'll see if we can get some people in, like Drax, like Black Owl, to talk about things that matter, that are interesting. So until then, you can, if you're on YouTube, you can always join Forum Gotterfunken, which is our Discord, to join in on the conversation. I can drag you into the chat then. And yeah, until next time, thanks very much for listening, and see you later. Bye bye.